is a tax neutral question.
Okay.
We have debt that's expiring in February, and so literally question 1 will have no impact, actually a slight decrease for the average assessed home in taxes on that question.
Sure.
And the focus on that question is making sure that we put in security vestibules, security cameras, and swipe card access at all of our schools.
Right.
Our buildings, which were built in the 50s and 60s, were not designed for some of the concerns that we have today.
Yes.
And in a lot of our buildings, when you enter the building, you have access to the entire building.
Right.
So the idea would be that there would be a security vestibule at the entrance, that the main office would be next to the security vestibule so that we can control the traffic that comes in and out of the building.
Yes.
Cameras within the buildings, swipe card access that we can use our IDs to enter the buildings, which would be great for our staff. So that if you're a phys ed teacher and you're out on the field and you need to bring the students in, you have access to get into the buildings.
Mm-hmm.
Coming in and going each day, you have access to the building.
Sure.
So I think that will be very helpful. Some of the other things that we're focusing on.
Let me just ask about with the vestibules, right? So the vestibules, the cameras inside and out, and the electronic access, the swipe card access with IDs. So we did it at Barclay. Right now we're doing it at Thomas Paine and Woodcrest, right? Part of the regular operational budget.
Mm-hmm.
And then all of the other school buildings are included in the referendum.
All of the other school buildings are included for the security vestibules and the cameras, except for East and West. Currently, right now, we are
Correct.
doing cameras at East and West.
Cameras at East, West, and the swipe card access.
Correct.
And the vestibules will be in the referendum.
Correct.
And then the alternative high school, which is housed here in the administration building,
Right.
is not, there's nothing in the administration building that's in the referendum.
Correct,
So
because it is an administration building.
it's an administration
Right.
building. There are more administrators than anything else that are here. So that would be done as part of the capital budget, the operational budget.
Correct.
So the referendum, question one passing, when the work is completed, security vestibules in all 18 of the school buildings.
Correct.
Okay.
Absolutely. Some of the other things that is in question 1, in terms of infrastructure, is roof replacements. We have a lot of roofs that are out of warranty at this point that need to be replaced. We fix roof leaks on almost a daily basis.
Right.
We have exterior wall repairs that need to be done. A lot of this is where the brick is pulling away from the wall.
Sure.
So we have a lot of that work that needs to be done throughout the district. We have some asbestos abatement that we need to do. No matter what, in these older buildings, it's in the flooring, it's in the pipe wrap. So, there are some areas that we will have to do some asbestos, and I think that's pretty typical in almost any school building.
Sure.
And then one of the other focuses of question 1 is HVAC in our multi-purpose rooms at our elementary schools.
Yes.
Most of our elementary schools do not have HVAC in their multi-purpose rooms. And so we felt it was important that there be large group areas that had the air conditioning component to it.
Sure.
In addition, one elementary school, Johnson, where our artwork came from, actually would get an additional all-purpose room built onto the back of it because it is the smallest all-purpose room in the district.
Right.
It is literally a cinder block box.
Cinder block box.
Does not have windows, does not have HVAC in it,
Right.
and so we felt very strongly that needed to be a question 1
Yes.
component. So.
Excellent.
So that would be done there as well.
So that's question 1.
That's question
right?
1. Yes.
And you started before you talked about that. Question 1 passing does not increase the tax levy.
Correct.
Right. It actually, is a decrease because we have debt that expires this coming March, right?
Yes.
From the previous money that we financed to go through.
20 years ago.
20 years ago.
Yes.
20 years ago, right?
Yep.
We are finishing paying off that bond. So question 1, which is a little less than $50 million, would actually, that passing tax rate would go down.
Slightly.
Slightly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yep.
And then question 2, which is the biggest question.
It is the
right?
biggest question, yeah. It has a lot of work in it, and that question is just over $113 million. And we would continue our roof replacement work in that question.
Yes.
We have a fire alarm system that needs to be upgraded at Carusi.
Mm-hmm.
We have been unable to do that work because we have very large asbestos issues at Carusi.
Yes.
And a lot of question 2 would address those asbestos issues.
Yes.
So in Carusi, we have asbestos in the ceilings, and that hinders us greatly from doing a lot of maintenance work there. So we literally would be removing, it's for the most part in the core building, the
Sure.
original building,
Yep.
removing that asbestos, which would allow us to do things like upgrade HVAC, replace piping, electrical, and do some of the things that need to
Right.
be done, for example, the alarm system. Electrical upgrades in our buildings are in question too.
Right.
Domestic water piping replacements. And then one of the biggest projects that I think will have a huge impact is corridor ceiling replacements and lighting replacements.
Yes.
Again, our buildings from the 50s and 60s are just not as bright as we would like them to be.
Right.
So this would go in and replace all of the ceilings and all the lightings, make them much brighter, much more easier to see, and
yes.
you know, all those good things. So HVAC replacement is included in this in 7 of our buildings, and then again, major asbestos abatement at Carusi.
Sure.
In addition, we would have in 5 of our elementary schools, new multipurpose rooms added on to there. That would include revamping the current multipurpose room in
right.
those buildings, and that would include Mann,
right.
Sharp,
right.
Barton,
right.
Kingston,
right.
and Knight.
And
would be our 5 elementary schools that would get those new.
because Johnson's in the
APRs.
first one.
Because Johnson's
Right, so
in the
there's
first
6.
one. So those 6 elementary schools would
Yes.
have all-purpose rooms. We would convert the current multi-purpose room into a cafeteria
Right.
type setting. So.
And HVAC controlled in
Correct.
those spaces.
Yes. Yeah.
And then when not being used as a cafeteria, those spaces, right, flexible space in the morning, in the afternoon, for other
Yes.
activities to be able to be used
Mhm.
in terms of what's going on, right? Reallocation of what can actually be done.
Absolutely, yeah.
Good.
And then we would also, in this question, add some music rooms at Rosa,
Right.
which is desperately needed. If you've ever been in their cafeteria, you can see that the back end of their cafeteria is basically a large storage area for their
Yes.
music program.
Right.
So they desperately need some more space there. So we would convert the current cafeteria into those music rooms and
Yes.
add a new cafeteria onto the back of that.
And-
Keep the same kitchen.
And with a stage.
And with a stage.
With a
because
stage.
We currently do not have a stage at
Right.
Rosa. So that's greatly needed in that building. We would include small group instruction rooms. This
Yes.
would not be new construction, it would be renovation of current
space.
building
Okay.
spaces.
Yep.
You know, if you have speech or one-on-one instruction that needs to happen, we
Sure.
have a lot of classrooms where they're, you know, they really just need so those individual areas to deliver that.
And you said a couple of
in a
times,
better
right?
setting.
Buildings that were designed and built in the 50s and 60s, the way we deliver education today is dramatically different,
Yes.
right? The way that we meet needs, the way that we address the needs of the children, the way that we organize our spaces. So converting some of those spaces is much more efficient use of what's being done.
Yep.
Good.
Some public toilet room alterations that would happen in this question. We have done a lot of our public toilet rooms. There's still a handful that are original to the building that
Sure.
need to be updated. And then our classroom toilet rooms
Right.
for our kindergartner and special ed classrooms are definitely original to the building.
Yes, they are.
And definitely need to be upgraded. So that would be included in this question as well.
Great. So that's question 1 and 2. So or proposal 1 and proposal 2. In order for proposal 1 has to pass
Yes.
for anything else to take place.
Correct.
And proposal 1 passes, and proposal 2 can pass. And
Correct.
proposal 1 and 2 pass, it takes us to proposal 3.
Right.
So tell us what's in proposal 3.
So in proposal 3, we will continue with our HVAC replacement work.
Sure.
We have a floor slab issue at High School East that would be repaired. And then we have a lot of site improvements, or as we have, you know, been calling them when we were developing this, hard surfaces.
Right.
So curbing,
Right.
paving, ADA accessibility, those kinds of things.
Right.
As we have joked, we could literally do an entire referendum just on paving.
Just on paving.
Our paving is in bad shape. We have to think about utilities that are under
Yes.
the paving that need to be addressed. We're not at the point where we can just throw some asphalt on top of it.
Right.
You know, we really need to do some major engineering to address
Right.
our parking lots and those types of areas. So
Sure.
that would be included in that question. Also, some science lab renovations at Carusi and West.
Nice.
A gymnasium renovation at Carusi, and then locker room renovations at at Carusi, Beck, and then the 2 high schools,
Right.
which are desperately needed as well. If you
Agreed.
have spent any time in those locker rooms, you know
agreed.
that. And then we were just talking about the play at East.
Yes.
Upgrades to the auditorium there literally has not been touched in a very long time.
Yes.
We need to upgrade the seating. We have asbestos floor tile underneath the seating that needs to be removed.
Right.
We have, you know, the whole technical area in the back that needs to be updated.
Right.
It's, as you have said, our largest auditorium in the district.
It's the largest auditorium in the district.
Yes, and has not been touched in a long time.
It has
so.
not. And you're right, Lynn. I mean, you talk about, I am always excited to see the shows. I'm looking forward to next weekend to go to see the show over there. And I will rival the productions that are done at our high schools and probably at our middle schools. I will tell you, we'll rival driving across the bridge into Philadelphia to see shows. But right, the space in which we're asking these children to perform and bring people in, and it's packed, right? People come out and support the arts in Cherry Hill. It's an incredibly important piece of the education and an essential piece of who we are and what we are as a community. It has to be done.
Yes.
I agree. I wish they'd done it the last referendum, and they did. It's time to do that work.
Right.
Yes.
And then finally, some of our athletic areas would get some improvements, including grandstands and lighting at East for the football field there.
Right.
We have that at West currently. This would add it to East as well.
Right. It's a lot.
It is a lot.
That's a lot of projects.
It is.
And some much needed work. So let's talk again. Let me just highlight because you mentioned the grandstands and the lights over at High School East. So a few years ago, in fact, as you were coming into the district, we were doing the finalization, I guess, of the synthetic fields and the all-weather tracks at both high schools, which is a shared service project that we did with the township where we split the cost. Both of the fields are lined for fall sports for boys and girls both, soccer, football, field hockey, and for spring sports we do the track and girls and boys lacrosse. And we'd like to, the next step in doing that was grandstands and lights. We'll have those kids have the opportunity to play at home under those lights. We have an incredible marching band at High School East that performs. We'd love to be able to put all the marching band kids in the bleachers and fans all at the same time that are there. So proposal 1 gets voted on. They all go up. These are the only 3 things that are being voted on. On December 11th in the election. Mrs. Wilson just gave me a sign. The Q&A, if you want to type, if you're watching us live, November 29th, go ahead and submit a question through the YouTube that Mr. DiCarlo and Mrs. Wilson have it up and going. Proposal 1 goes up, gets voted on. Proposal 1 has to pass in order for Proposal 2 to pass. Proposals 1 and 2 have to pass in order for Proposal 3 to pass. Right? All right, to go through. And then once December 12th comes, if all 3 proposals, then we start talking about putting the projects out, right, bidding. And we've talked about it with the board, we've talked about it with the professionals. Just a reminder to folks, we spent a lot of time out in the community over the last few months talking about the specific questions and or the proposals, when the vote's going to be. And certainly we've had a lot of discussion over the last couple of years about the needs with our facilities. There's work that the district has been engaged in. There's work that, as we've talked to people in the community and PTAs and staff, and then the professionals on the outside, because construction is not my business, right? That is not my area of strength at all. We work with our architects and engineers, our Beskin associates, and Mr. Middleton, the engineer that we work with, earlier in the fall presented at a board meeting and talked about the team of about 36 people on the outside Beskin associates that they had working on the proposals and the projects, not to mention the folks there. So literally 40-ish and a little more than that people on the outside, professionals, engineers and architects and contractors and environmental folks and estimators, all to be involved in terms of what goes on. So let me ask you again a couple of other questions, if you don't mind. Right? I don't know you're here, you're stuck, lunch, right? I will share my pink ladies and carrots with you afterwards for sure. Because I always like to share lunch after. I just don't like to eat while we're in the midst of doing it. But a couple of other questions as we do it. So this passes, right? These pass. All of these projects that are in here. These are the projects, if they get approved, that will be done. Correct. Right? Yes. Like we can't. There's no shift. Board can't say, well, we want to set these projects aside. We're going to do something else.
No, because we have to go through a project application process. So we have submitted project applications outlining this work with the state. We can't then turn around and say, oh, you know what, instead we're going to do this. It doesn't work that way. We do not have approval to do that.
To do it. So we've submitted all that. All those approvals have come through. This is the work to be done.
Right.
Will there be other work done in the districts during this time?
There's always work being done. We always have projects in mind. And one of the things as we went through this process, we were trying to decide what goes in what question and what should stay in the referendum and what are things that we can do through a capital reserve account.
Sure.
Some of the smaller projects we pulled out.
Yes. The
work that will be done in this building we pulled out just because of the nature of this building.
Right.
But we are constantly making lists and looking at different projects that we can do outside of the referendum, and that's something that happens annually. We have a list of For example, last year we replaced some exterior doors that needed to be replaced.
Yes.
We had now another wave that we're preparing to do.
Yes.
So, there's always smaller type projects. As we go through our budget process, which, we're in the midst of right now, we start to make those lists and think about what can we do through capital reserve, what can we do through our regular budget.
Right.
There is an ongoing list of things that we are always working on.
Great. And again, doing these projects this way allows us to borrow the money to finance large projects, which opens up, because if a roof is leaking and a roof has to be replaced, it has to be replaced.
Right.
Right? Waiting to do it does not make the roof any better.
And I just want to point one thing out because
Sure.
we have heard this a lot as we
Yes.
have done some of our presentations. If there's a mold issue in a building, we will address the mold issue immediately.
Correct.
We've gotten a lot of questions about, well, will you address the mold? We were never going to wait to address
Right.
a mold issue.
Right. That's an immediate.
If we have something like that, we will address it right away.
Right.
We will
Excellent.
not wait for this.
I appreciate that.
Mhm.
So $3 to $5 million a year, round numbers, is
Yeah.
what we have been spending, continue to spend. We'll look to do that. Let me go through, folks, a couple of the questions that came through during the previous online lunch in October. So one of the questions was, how many consultant proposals were considered for the security plan, and what was the related experience?
Mhm.
So one of the things we talked about with security vestibules is what the design was. There's an architectural and engineering piece, and then what's it mean to be safe and secure? And we have talked about it. In fact, I'd like to share the story of a little over a year ago, when we did the ribbon cutting over at Barclay, which was the original security vestibule that we put in. Chief Monahan, who's chief of the Ontario Police Department, talked about it's literally the culmination of a 4.5, almost 5 years worth of work between the township, the police department, and the school district, and the folks to talk about what is it that we can do to make the buildings more secure.
Mhm.
Security vestibules listed as best practice by the New Jersey Department of Ed, national law enforcement, and that kind of thing. So if I recall correctly, when we talked about having a security audit come in, we had 2 different proposals that came through.
Mhm.
The question, one of the follow-up on the question was, what related experience? Both of the companies were run by people that had extensive law enforcement
Yes.
careers. Ultimately, Ronin Security is the company that we went with, that we contracted with. An executive summary of Ronin Security audit of the district is listed on the district website.
Mhm.
In fact, let me talk a little bit about the district website, especially when it comes to the referendum. The best place to find information about the referendum is on the district website. www.chclc.org is our homepage. If you go on there, there are 2 different places where you can click to find information about the referendum. There's an incredible amount of information about the referendum on the website. Images, lists for each of the individual schools about projects to be included. There's an FAQ. Questions like this will be included on there. There are a lot of questions that are up there as well. We encourage folks to go on. And if you do have questions, if you're not asking them today, watching us live, email us. Send me an email, contact Mrs. Wilson. Go through the quick question feature that's on our website to submit the questions. Another question that came through is, what does the board and Dr. Milosh plan to do with the information requested from the PTA to assess how parents plan to vote on the bond referendum? Will there be any penalty for schools that do not indicate the vote in favor? So I'm going to interpret this as a question was about Zone PTA. So I met with Zone PTA on the 27th, which was Tuesday of this week. Zone PTA, in Cherry Hill, we have an umbrella PTA organization that represents the 19 PTAs in town. Each of the PTA presidents, as well as other members, sit on the committee, and Zone PTA put out to the individual PTAs to find out about support for the referendum. That was the Zone PTA piece. The question, will there be a penalty? I'm not sure what you mean by penalty. Certainly not a penalty on our end. For me, right, people will talk about the referendum. I'm glad people are talking about it, but there's no sort of penalty. There's no punitive action for adults or for children or for anything in that manner. Another question was, does the board or Dr. Milosh have access to actual voter information by school, and how will that be used? So the answer at first blush is no, right? I don't know how people are going to vote. Certainly after an election, right, there's a process that anybody can go through, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's a public information process to go out and find out whether or not people voted.
Correct.
It doesn't actually say, that Joe Milosh voted yes or that Lynn Sugars voted no. All of that would show is Joe Milosh voted, Lynn Sugars voted,
Right.
to go through. I'm not sure how you access that information. I'm sure if you go through the county website, it'll be able to give you more details about finding that out. That's not something that we have done. It's certainly not something that we would know ahead of time. Another question that came through yesterday was, will the district be applying for the New Jersey Department of Education's Title I, Part A, discretionary grants that were just announced? And by what process does the district identify and apply for grants? And the information for the NJDOE grant is below. I'm aware of the grants that the state put out, the Title I Part A. One of the things that the state released when they released those 3 grants to go through was an Excel spreadsheet, which is on the state website, where the state has identified the districts that are eligible to apply for those grants. Cherry Hill is not eligible to apply for those grants, so we will not be submitting an application. We are always on the lookout for grants, always on the lookout for ways to find additional funds for specific projects within the school district, whether it be through the federal government or through private funds. There's an ongoing process that we use that comes through my office, or it could be through Mrs. Sugar's office, or through public information. Sometimes some of the greatest resources we have are folks in the community saying, listen, have you heard about this? Have you seen this? That we go through. So that's always an ongoing piece. And then another question that came in says, I'm hearing that if the bond passes, it will take 3 to 5 years to redo, but it took less than 2 years to write it initially. Princeton just adjusted theirs and put it up for vote within 5 months. Where's the 3 to 5 years coming from? I'm going to guess that the question was probably, I'm hearing that if the bond fails, it will take 3 to 5 years to redo. I'm not sure, the person that submitted that question, if you can send me a follow-up, I'm not sure where you heard 3 to 5 years to redo. Princeton, I can't speak for Princeton Public School District. Princeton is also going out for referendum. Each individual community is part of the local control with local school districts. Boards of Education and the community each have the opportunity to make a determination about how to do a bond, when to do a bond, what's included in that. I've talked a lot publicly about how we have built this bond, which has been a very formal process over the last 2.5 years that we've gone through to do this. It's been an ongoing discussion literally since the last referendum was passed nearly 20 years ago. And it's an ongoing piece as we do our facilities checklist, update our long-range facilities plan, and exist in our schools on a daily basis. But that's an individual community decision about how bonds are created. I couldn't think to speak for Princeton Public Schools. I do want to remind folks, because we continue to be out there talking about the referendum over the next couple of weeks. Because again, Tuesday, December 11th, the polls are open from 3 to 8 p.m. For the referendum. Over the next 2 weeks, I will be out and about speaking about the referendum, presenting about the referendum. I encourage people to come out, discuss it. If you have questions, whether you are wholeheartedly in favor of it and want to talk about that, if you have questions because you're not sure about what it is, and you want things clarified, come out and ask. I like to talk to people. This Sunday, December 2nd, I'll be in the Media Center at High School West from 1:30 to 3 p.m. We'll be over there. I'll be doing kind of a formal presentation. We'll be sharing information from the website and answering questions. On Tuesday, December 4th, I'll be meeting with the Cherry Hill African American Civic Association at the Carmen Tillelli Community Center, which is right in front of the municipal building from 7 to 8:30 p.m. Again, doing a formal presentation, answering questions, and talking about the referendum. And then on Saturday, December 8th, so a little over a week from now, I'll start the day over at Rosa. I'll be doing a formal presentation around 9:30. We actually are having its bonding over breakfast. CHEA, which is the professional association that represents our teachers and nurses and counselors and custodians, is sponsoring a breakfast that morning. It'll begin about 8:45. So we encourage folks to come out to the Rosa Media Center. Then also on Saturday, December 8th, I'll be at the Cherry Hill Library from 11:30 to 1 to talk with folks that may have questions about the referendum. And then from 1:30 to 3 p.m. on Saturday, December 8th, I'll be at Short Hills Deli talking to folks that are interested in talking about the referendum. Sunday, December 9th, I'll do 3 additional visits. From 9 to 10:30, I'll be at the Cherry Hill Health and Racquet Club. Same thing, to talk to folks, a little sit and chat session. From 11 to 12:30 on December the 9th, I'll be in the JCC in the lobby there to talk to folks. And on Sunday afternoon from 1 to 2:30 in the afternoon, I'll be up at Ponzio's on Route 70 to talk to folks and to answer questions. Then on Monday, December the 10th, I'll be over at Sharp Elementary School. The Sharp PTA has been gracious enough to invite me to come and speak to the Sharp PTA. And I know that they have opened that up to the other PTAs, the folks in the area that come out. Again, we'll be doing a presentation, answering questions about what's included and what our steps are and what the process is. We want people to come out and vote. We want people to make sure that they are informed. And again, the best place to find that information is from our website. an even better place is to come out and talk to us about it.
Mm-hmm.
As all of you know, I like to talk. I like to meet new people. You know, I had the opportunity a couple weeks ago, we were out at Temple Beth Shalom on a Sunday morning, met some folks from the community who I'd never met before. That's a highlight for me. People had some really good questions about what's in the referendum and why and what our next steps are. One of my greatest joys as superintendent over the last few years has been to go out and meet new families in the community. And as I meet new families that are here and they're sending their children to our schools, I always ask them, why Cherry Hill? You know, why did you move here? And to a person, you know, they always say, we moved here because of the schools. It's the same reason my parents moved my brother and sister and I here from Detroit in March of 1977, is for the schools. The schools are the central piece of our community. We have an incredible educational system that's based on the incredible people that work here, the incredible kids, and the wonderful families with high expectations for the education. This referendum allows us to continue to support the buildings, to do enhancements in the buildings, to do some of the ongoing maintenance and repairs that needs to be done as buildings age. So we want to move forward with where we are. We look forward to you coming out. And again, if you have questions, ask us. Lynn, thanks for joining me. And you know, as Mr. DiCarlo kind of shuts us off on here, we'll probably share a Pink Lady, and I will have my yogurt. Oh, before I go off, thank you, Mrs. Wilson. I forgot my books. You know, I like to share my book list, my current reading. Mrs. Wilson, I would have been disappointed in me if I had forgotten my books. So a couple of weeks ago was one of my 3 favorite weekends during the year, which is the annual book sale, the triannual book sale at the Cherry Hill Library. So I picked up some new pieces that I will be going through. I just started this one, Selected Letters of James Thurber. So if you've ever read James Thurber, one of his most popular short stories is The Secret Life of Walter Mitty. This is fascinating, right? It's a collected work of some of his letters, personal and professional. This is one that I've not started to read again. I read a number of years ago. It's William Faulkner, Go Down Moses. I'm planning this one for later in December and over winter break. This is a reread for me. John Green, Paper Towns, has been a popular text with some of our middle school and high school kids. John Green has written a number of different books. One of my favorites as well, John Green's, is Looking for Alaska. So John Green I'll be going into. Refugee. So Alan Gratz, an incredibly successful best-selling author of young adult and teen-age books, which I will tell you are very popular with adults as well. Visited Rosa Middle School a couple of weeks ago and talked about this book, Refugee. It was an absolute pleasure for me to meet Alan. He signed a book for me, and so I'll be reading Refugee. And then finally, one that I'm planning for over winter break, Toni Morrison, which is A Mercy. If you've never read A Mercy, it's one of her most powerful works, and I encourage you to pick up her stuff to go through. And again, just a second thank you to the children at Johnson Elementary School, you know, who came out and have shared their artwork with us. If I don't see you personally, I wish you happy winter holidays. Take some time just to breathe and just to be, enjoy family, enjoy friends. You know, and on my mug, as I'm kind of going through right now, be kind. This has been our online lunch for November 2018.